We have new data that proves it's becoming harder and harder to get a gem mint PSA 10 these days. And there are rumors circulating about a change to PSA's grading standards. What does this mean for the hobby? And could this change the outlook of PSA 9 cards in the markets in the future? We're gonna break it all down for you now. Hello, sports card investors, and welcome to another episode of Cards on the Table. Guys, we have Prizm NBA selling for a third of the price of Prizm WNBA. We also have a ridiculous checklist of parallels for Prizm NBA. We got Tom Brady investing in a card shop. We're going to get to all of that. But first, we've got to start with this big topic about the number of PSA 10s dropping. The gem rate dropping. And I want to start by showing you guys a little purchase that I just made online, because this actually relates to this story, and the audience is going to figure out why here in just a second. So you guys know I built out the complete collection of all the LeBron James gold refractors from Topps Chrome of the 2000s. I had the 2005 Topps Chrome in a PSA 9, and very happy to have just acquired one of, I think, only maybe 7 or 8 of the PSA 10s.
Oh boy. Oh, wow.
It's a beautiful copy, except one thing. Look at the centering.
Yeah, left to right.
What do you think the centering is on that card?
60-40.
60-40. Interesting that you think that, because today, if that card were cracked and resubmitted to PSA, I would suggest that there is a strong chance that it would not, in fact, get a PSA 10. And that is probably the case with many iconic cards over the years that are a bit too far to the left or a bit too far to the right with the centering. And that brings us to the main topic today. Now, what we have noticed in the data is that if you go back to May of 2024, so we're talking about 9 months ago, right? And you look at gem rates data where they show the gem percentage, the PSA 10 percentage of all cards submitted to PSA. Out of every single card submitted to PSA in May of 2024, 43.1% of those cards were given a PSA 10. Since May of 2024, it has been on the decline. Almost every single month, that percentage has dropped. And most recently, in January of 2025, it had dropped all the way down to 33.9% of all cards submitted got a PSA 10. So we've gone from 43.1% down to 33.9% PSA 10 rate, gem rate, over the course of the last 9 months. Now, there's a lot of factors that could factor into that, like what sets are being released and the quality control on those sets and everything of that nature, but it feels like it's a substantial drop. Now, the PSA 10 gem rate has been lower in the past. Back in the middle of 2022, at one point, it actually dipped below 30% briefly, but that was also a very weird time at PSA because they were catching up and kind of finishing up with that massive backlog of cards that they accumulated during COVID. So that data is a little bit hard to compare. Over the last couple of years, we're at a low point for PSA 10 gem rate. Some are speculating that PSA 10 recently changed their grading standards specifically around centering, like that card that I just showed you. And the evidence of this is that a month ago, if you had gone to PSA's website and you had looked at how they define their grades, their webpage that defined a PSA 10 said that it had to have 60-40 centering or better. If you go to that same webpage today, it says 55-45. So there was definitely a change that took place to that webpage. Now, PSA says, we updated the webpage, but we didn't necessarily change our grading standards. We reached out to them for comment, and what they said was, look, we always wanted to see 55-45 or better for a PSA 10. But if the rest of the card was really sharp, the graders would sometimes allow a card that was 60-40 to still be given a PSA 10. And that's kind of the same today. We just changed the language on that page, and then we noted now that by greater discretion, they have some flexibility here. So they say it was more of just a wording update rather than a grading policy change, a grading scale change. But the data suggests that in recent months, we've been seeing it, harder and harder to get a PSA 10. Is this by design? Is this intentional? Is this just a fluke in the data? Could this drive an extra premium for PSA 10s in the future? What does this mean for the hobby? And what does this mean for PSA 9s as a result of this? Doug, I want to get all of your thoughts on this. I'm going to start with you today.
At the end of last year, beginning of this year, we did this thing where we made predictions for the hobby this year. And one of the things that I said was that PSA 9s would have a rebound. They would start to recover a little bit compared to raw card prices. But it's not because of PSA changing grading standards. It's because I've seen how hard it is to gem this year's set of cards. Take 2024 Prism football. I've had a ton of those in hand. I've joined breaks, I've ripped a bunch of boxes, and I have very, very few gradable cards out of that set. And it's not because of 60-40 or 55-45 centering. It's because the QC is just terrible across the board on those cards. Here's the thing about this, right? Maybe they changed their grading standards a little bit secretly. Some people want to say it's just population control and there's all these conspiracies going around. There's one keyword in that matters more than anything else, and that is grader's discretion. The fact of the matter is, if there's a card that is a borderline 9, borderline 10, it really matters which grader you get on any given day. And that's the truth. I mean, there is a set of standards they have to follow, but it says right there, grader's discretion. They can lean one way or the other based on the overall eye appeal. I've personally had a card that I've sent off for grading that's come back a PSA 9, and I've cracked it and resubmitted it because I thought the card was perfect, and it's come back a 10. It really matters whose hand it falls into, and that's the crazy part of all this. A swing of hundreds or thousands of dollars based on whichever grader you happen to get on any given day. And that's the thing that I think frustrates people. That's where the inconsistency comes in.
Yeah. T-Paw, what were your thoughts when you saw this has been circulating around, this grading scale change? Is it real? Is it not real? Some people are going as far as saying like PSA was trying to cover this up. I don't know why PSA would try to cover it up. I don't think they're trying to cover it up, but it is a little odd that they changed their website. I can see why people are alarmed, especially paired with this, what the data shows, the decrease in PSA 10. So what's your take?
I have a lot to say. I'll try not to have another 5-minute monologue like last week, but I do think it was a mistake not to announce it. And just to clarify, to say, hey, look, honestly, this is always what we've been looking for. We still have the operative word, approximately. It now says approximately 55-45 is what it says in the new verbiage on the website. Whereas it used to say 55-45, no worse than 60-40. So, okay, you still got some wiggle room in there. But there's two different things I want to look at here. I want to look at the gem rate data a little bit deeper. And then I want to talk about something I've talked about in the past, which is kind of the insanity of PSA 10 premiums. So gem rate data. Ryan sent us some information that showed SGC gem rate has also decreased over the last year from a high watermark of 39.6% in January of 24 all the way down to 21.1% most recently. So what does that correspond to? SGC didn't change their standards. Yes, they're owned by the same parent company now, but they didn't change anything. That to me tells me there's a quality control issue that's plaguing ultra modern, which is always the bulk of things. However, interestingly, BGS gem rate has actually been rising from an average of about 29 to 30% in late 23 to early 24 to the last 5 months being 44, 49, 62, 42, and 53% respectively. I have had a suspicion for many months now that one of the things that Beckett might be trying to do to get market share back is grading more easily and giving more gem mints and more BGS 10 pristines and more BGS 10 black labels out to incentivize people to come over so that you want to grade your cards, you want to get the top grades. So that's just an interesting anecdote. PSA, obviously, as you said, has been declining for the last 9 months, but they're still kind of in line with their 2022 and 23 norms. What we know is that the overall quality of the current stuff that's being printed is the bulk, it's a lion's share of what's being graded. So that obviously impacts everything. The only way I think we could really know whether or not there's been some change since they made a change is one, if we actually knew the exact date when this happened, which doesn't, if they did make a change, it doesn't mean it was the date it was updated on the website. So you'd kind of need to know if there was an internal policy shift. Oh, it was on November 15th of last year. Okay, what product maybe came out November 1st and has 2 weeks of controlled data to see, and then 2 weeks after and analyze that, looking at everything as a whole, including all the historical stuff. I'm not sure how useful that is. My suspicion, as I think you guys kind of alluded to, is that nothing here actually substantially changed internally. I was talking to Filmington. You guys know Filmington. he brought up something I didn't know. It was a little anecdote. He saw an exchange on X. And what happened was somebody sent their card in for grading. It came back a PSA 9. And they got grader's notes on it. And the grader's notes said PSA 9 for centering. The person used a centering tool and showed that it was 5743, tagged Nat Turner on X. He reviewed it, sent the card back into him, and they reholded it as a 10. This was before the grading change. Can you imagine the PR nightmare plus the operational activity trap of every single person now auditing your grader's notes, which we know they went through a lot of internal rigmarole about whether or not they wanted to do that or not. So that's an interesting anecdote, and I hadn't really considered that. But now, instead of saying it could be 55 or 60 maybe, it's 55, lock it down, and that's it. So I think that's that. The bigger thing that I think nobody's really talking about, I made a video 11 months ago, the title on the Market Movers channel called The PSA 10 Premium is Out of Control. And the first thing that I highlighted was the insanity of how much more expensive a PSA 10 is than a BGS 9.5 Michael Jordan Fleer rookie card. It's many multiples over. So I think a lot of people should go watch that. I understand premiums in 1 point grade increments or half point grade increments on vintage when it's literally the only thing. There's no variations, there's no permutations, there's nothing else. It's that card. And so the only rarity you have is sort of this, what I call, artificial rarity of grading and condition. At the same time, you still see this crazy premium for PSA 10 over BGS 9.5s, over SGC 10s. And in the ultra modern world, the fact that the PSA 10 sells for 3 to 4x what a PSA 9 does on a card like this that could easily go from 16,000 to 5,000 or less with a centering change. This is what I'm thinking about. We have half of the sports card internet getting into fights with each other, losing their minds and putting up, really, really angry videos about a 5% difference on 25% of the grading criteria, which is centering. That's the minuscule difference we're talking about on the whole appearance and the condition of the card that could make the difference. And the proof of this to me is that people don't buy the card. Everybody said buy the card, not the grade. It's not what people do.
Yeah,
they buy a little 3-letter acronym with a red box around it and a number.
You're right.
And that card could easily be a PSA 9.
And guilty as charged because I own this in a PSA 9. Yet I was willing to pay
the centering might have been
over
better.
$15,000 to get a PSA 10.
Yes.
My PSA 9 copy might look better, but this one's the 10. I want the 10. I want perfection.
Yeah. It's crazy.
When you look at it on a macro level, maybe it is a little silly. Maybe the whole thing's a little bit silly, but that is the hobby we live in, and that's how people perceive it. Interesting stuff. I kind of wonder if that story you told with Filmington and Nat Turner, going from a 9 to a 10 on that one card, I kind of wonder if that actually prompted the website update.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe that was actually the genesis of this entire thing.
It was like a CYA to say, we can't have this. We gotta tighten up our verbiage.
Interesting. All right. Hey, times are a-changing. Another thing that is changing, by the way, is Arena Club. Our sponsor, Arena Club, every week I come on here and I tell you about their slab pack drops, which take place on Friday. Well, this Friday, tomorrow, they're doing another one, but it's a little bit different now. Arena Club has added 2 higher levels of slab packs that are going to be dropping starting this Friday. They have a diamond multi-sport slab pack. This is the best of the best. And in that slab pack, you have a chance of getting the 1986 Michael Jordan Fleer rookie card in a BGS 9.5. BGS's gem mint, there you go. And then they have emerald slab packs now as well, which go by sport. Their baseball ones got a beautiful Juan Soto Bowman Chrome Auto Gold Refractor. Their football one has $25,000 worth of wax that you could hit. And their basketball one has a LeBron James Topps Chrome X-Fractor PSA 9. They also still, of course, have the ruby packs like they did before, as well as gold and silver packs. All of these are dropping 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific tomorrow, Friday. And if you use promo code SCI20, you're going to get 20% off any of those slab packs, even the diamond level. Pretty sweet deal. So go download the Arena Club app right now and use promo code SCI20 for 20% off. All right, we got a couple of fun topics to jump in here today, guys. How about this? How about, what world is this? Would you believe if we went back in time, let's go back in time like 4 or 5 years ago, and if I told you that in the year 2025, WNBA Prism first off the line would sell out of its Dutch auction at $2,200 for a first off the line hobby box. Prism NBA, first off the line, would sell out of its Dutch auction like it did earlier this week at $716 a hobby box. Yes, you heard me right. WNBA sold out for more than 3 times more than NBA Prism. I mean, I don't even know what to make of that. That would be like someone would bet $1 zillion 5 years ago that would never, ever, ever be the case in history, and yet here we are. When you saw this teapot, does this surprise you? What does it say about the hobby right now?
Well, if you had told me this 5 years ago, I would have laughed. If you would have told me 2 years ago, I would have said you were nuts. If you had told me a year ago that it would be 3x, I would have been like, yeah, no, come on. Like maybe with the Caitlin Clark effect, I would have said, okay, I could see it going for the same, maybe a little more, not 3x. This is a testament to the power and importance of a superstar in a draft class. That's what it boils down to. We saw what Wemby did to drive prices of wax up last year. Prism FOTL 2023 is still at $2,000 a box for NBA with the Wemby rookies in it. And that was without the autos and things. So that was very expensive. Caitlin Clark has that star power. She has that it factor, and hence the price of those WNBA boxes. The draft class in the NBA this year might go down as the worst, but it's early.
Yeah.
But it might go down as the worst class since 2000, if not of all time, if not in many, many, many decades. It's not looking particularly good. I've seen some flashes from Zachary Rizachet that looks pretty good.
Hey, he's getting a little more playing time now with Jalen Johnson now. He's looking good.
He looks good. I've seen some games where he really looks like he's raw, but he's got some moves and he's got some talent, and he's going to be, if he can develop a really consistent shot, nobody can block it. So he's got sort of like that, I'm not going to even say KD, but people will lose their minds, but like unblockable jump shot, so he looks talented. Some of the other guys that are obviously in the class, you've got Castle obviously leading the class. He's leading the Rookie of the Year voting, where Wells, McCain's been solid. Bazelis has been really solid in the last week or so. They got rid of Levine, and now he's getting more playtime. I think he had a 24-point game. So it just doesn't strike me that any of these guys are superstar potential, and none of them have hype, including Sarr and Rizachet and others. So that's why the price is so low. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, so I wasn't necessarily surprised at the WNBA price. Caitlin Clark, her ceiling is potentially the best player to ever play in that league. Yeah. That would be like us waiting on the drop, the Dutch auction for 86 Fleer basketball. Can you imagine what, if this was that level, what that would sell for? On the other hand, you've got the NBA product, which I am shocked dropped below 1,000. I realize that NBA is falling in popularity in the hobby and in general. I realize this is a really bad draft class. But you never see Prism NFL or Prism NBA flagship product first off the line drop below 1,000. That really surprised me. So the gap between the two really surprised me. What does this say for the hobby boxes? If you can get first off the line for $750, whatever the number is, we're getting hobby at $500, $600. Yeah. Something will have to change there because that's just insanely cheap. But you look at the class. Who's propping it up? You mentioned Castle, Kello Ware. It's a big guy heavy, class at that. You got Sarr and Rizachet and Zach Edey. This is not compelling. This is not moving the needle whatsoever. Importantly, is what happens next year. This will set up well for a nice rebound when the licenses change over and we actually have superstars. So this will be a nice calm before the storm, I think.
Yeah, a little Cooper Flag chasing next year. That one's not going to be cheap. I'm excited about the fact that I might actually be able to rip a NBA Prism hobby box for $500 or $600, as you said. Yeah. I hope that's actually what we can sell them at here in Cards HQ and everything like that. It feels more attainable. Still, that's still an expensive box, don't get me wrong, but that's way less than what they have been in previous years. Yeah. So I'm cool with that. But yeah, the difference between that and WNBA, even with the down draft class, it still has shocked me, absolutely shocked me. Yep. So interesting times in the hobby. I want to talk about the parallel checklist from that product. That's going to be an interesting conversation, but let me show this to you guys first. This is BCW's backpack. Now this backpack, they kind of designed these for TCG. These are called the Spectrum TCG backpacks, but they actually have quite a bit of utility for sports card carrying as well. You got some different compartments in here. These things are configurable, designed to hold decks of cards. If you're doing TCG, you could also configure the interiors here to hold slabs or top loaders or that type of thing as well to take with you on the go. And they even have a back compartment here that is designed to hold a binder. So if you're doing, binders, obviously that's, particularly relevant with TCG, but with sports cards perhaps as well. Look at this. You're never going to lose that one at a card show.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
That's nice and flashy. Thank you.
Yeah, if somebody walks out with that, I think you'll notice.
We got all kinds of color options available.
For Doug.
These are all available right now on bcwsupplies.com. And if you use promo code SCI at bcwsupplies.com, you're going to get 10% off your entire purchase. You'll get these Spectrum backpacks or any of their top loaders or sleeves or magnetic card holders or all their other on and on storage and displays and all kinds of stuff. It is all at bcwsupplies.com. Promo code SCI for 10% off. Okay, guys, let's talk about the checklist of that Prism NBA product. So we just talked about the price of the Prism NBA product being down. I don't know if the checklist had anything to do with that. If people saw this thing and maybe it scared them a little bit. I believe there's over 80 different parallels.
81?
81, I think, is the exact number of different parallels there are. We're used to there being a tiger stripe. Well, now there's also a white tiger stripe. We're used to there being different color sparkle parallels. Well, now there's also different color glitter parallels in addition to sparkles. We're used to there being the cherry blossom that started a couple years ago. Well, now we have the plum blossom and we have the lotus flower in addition to the cherry blossom. Plus we have a bunch of other China variations, dragons and China refractor.
Jade dragons and other dragons.
We have a skewed refractor. We have all kinds of stuff. Half of what I don't even know what it's possibly going to look like, but they're all in the checklist. 81 parallels in total. Teapot, is this too many? Have we reached the point of absurdity? But I've asked you that so many times before, and yet the checklists keep growing. What do you think?
Yeah, I might surprise you with my answer because you know what my answer is? If you're going to have 50 parallels, why not just have 100? Once you've, I think in my mind, gone above 25, 30 at the most, like they had a few years back, you just might as well open the floodgates in a way. So I know what's going to happen. Every single box break that's posted to YouTube of Prism, every single one is going to say, loaded box. These boxes are loaded because it's going to be full of color, which Prism always gives you like a color in a hobby pack, but it's going to be loaded full of color. And I think there's going to be a lot of under 75 numbered stuff that gets hit and people are going to feel really good about it. And there's going to be a lot of big LeBrons hit and other, big players. I bet Luka won't be in his Lakers jersey, obviously, but he's still hot right now. There's a lot. In a way, like the brand Prism suggests a rainbow. When you cast through a prism, you get a rainbow. So I don't know. They're leaning into an identity here. One thing I do like is that they're putting different parallel effects into different boxes, right? So we've had fast break historically. We've had choice. We've had ice in retail. So they're sort of compartmentalizing. If you're ripping hobby, going for the true colors to me is what you should be after. And Topps actually did the same thing this year with Series 1. So Series 1 just released and they've started they put more identity into the different box formats, offering like box type exclusive parallels, which I think is really important. So to me, the hobby from an investability perspective should be saying yes to those true colors because they are the ones that carry more lineage. They're the ones that are more iconic, and let all the other ones, which I like a lot of those other effects, sometimes more than the true colors, maybe be more of collector cards. You shouldn't expect to get a wave parallel or whatever and get the same as the true color variant. There was some stuff that confused me. It might have just been an error on the part of either Panini or Beckett for publishing where only the golds in particular said like wave gold instead of gold wave, whereas all the other ones are red wave and ruby wave and whatever. That was a little odd just from a consistency perspective, but yeah, as much as I consider myself like an amateur arborist, I never thought we'd see so many tree parallels and other things going into sports cards. The biggest problem I have with this, I said this in a past episode, is that I really wish they would label the back of the cards with what they are so that if you have a sparkle or a speckle or a glitter or a shine or whatever. Now you're going to have the same dynamic perpetuated where eBay listings happen and you don't know if it's a wave or a hyper or a laser or a sparkle or a glitter or this or that or a kaleidoscope or a seismic. And that confuses people. And it messes up the data that gets ingested into market movers. And so I wish they would just put it on the back.
I agree.
They do put the levels in select, right? You see mezzanine or whatever on the back.
I agree.
Just put what the parallel is.
I agree. They should absolutely do that. T-Pod's less mad about this than I assumed he would be, Doug.
I've just resigned myself.
He's resigned himself.
It's inevitable.
What's your reaction?
Completely agree across the board. The ship has sailed on trying to put together a rainbow of your collection.
Yeah.
That sailed 3 or 4.
Now you do like the ice
ago.
rainbow or something, you know.
So you're exactly right, and that was my initial thought: is the true color now is the chase. That's what matters, and I can appreciate the fact that if they are going to blow these print runs through the roof, and I understand why they have to do that. We'll talk about that, but if they're going to do that, have them exclusive to different formats. You've got Blaster exclusive parallels and Megabox exclusive parallels, then T-Mall over here, and then No Huddle or Fast Break over here. Whatever, like have every format have its own exclusive types of parallels, but true hobby, true color is the actual chase. And maybe that can be the rainbow, just the true colors. But, this is shining a light on the fact that they are absolutely printing this stuff through the roof. And I get it. This is the last year. This is the last year of the license, right?
I think so.
So this makes a lot of sense. Like, they've got to capitalize on this right now because their future might be a little murky. It's going to be a little unpredictable how well they can sell without licensing going forward. They need to make as much money as they can now to create that buffer. So just print. And unfortunately, that means 81 parallels.
Yeah, it's wild. I think you guys had a lot of good thoughts on that. I'm not going to add anything to it other than it's wild.
I do think there's some interesting ways to sub-collect now within it, like almost less pressure to chase the whole rainbow. Like for the Lions, I was looking at getting one of each of the different blue parallels.
That's exactly what I do.
With the players on the checklist. So like you get the blue no huddle, you get the regular blue, you get the blue ice, you get like of one of each player.
I collected Ray Davis, former Wildcat on the Bills.
Yeah.
I collected every blue Bills color match.
There you go.
There's still,
I like that.
Still ways to collect.
Good idea. Good thinking, gentlemen.
Yeah.
One more story to cover. The GOAT has officially arrived in the hobby. Tom Brady has bought 50% of CardVault. So CardVault is a series of local card shops currently in the Boston area, run by a good team up there. Chris Costa, one of the guys who runs them, we know well. Seem to be a really good business operation run by really good people. They've been successful pre-Tom Brady. They've been around for a bit. They have a store in or near Fenway Park, in or near Gillette Stadium, in or near the Boston Garden, Foxwoods Casino. They have a store. So they've got these kind of locations up there in the Boston area that are these premier spots that get a lot of attention. And they have a pretty good online presence with breaking and live selling and all that type of thing. Well, now enter the GOAT himself, Tom Brady, right? Mr. Boston. He's joining the team in a substantial way. So when I first saw the news story that he was getting involved, I kind of assumed, he's probably getting like 5 or 10%, maybe for free, to attach his name to it and to do endorsement deals. No, 50%. And I believe he's investing his own capital. He's bringing money to the table. He's getting 50% ownership in this. So it's very substantial. Like this, Brady is very, very involved in this business. And the business will now have his name on it, CardVault by Tom Brady. They immediately announced that they're going to be opening up a new card shop. Their premier store that's going to be at the American Dream Mall in New Jersey, which is a huge mall and also right next to the stadium where the Giants and the Jets play. So kind of another stadium proximity store. And they say they want to be aggressive and open up additional stores throughout the country. What are your thoughts? Is this a big deal for the hobby, a little deal, or really no deal at all? I'm going to start with you, Doug.
It doesn't mean a lot to me. I don't know. You guys might have more opinions that can really sway me because I'm not convinced one way or the other that this means anything at all. We've seen Tom Brady a lot in the hobby recently. He's really close with Michael Rubin, and his presence has been, prominent. Rubin was in the store. He FaceTimed Tom Brady while he's in here. Like, he's getting more involved in the hobby, and we could kind of see something like this coming. So I'm not really surprised by it. This makes sense for the area as well. They've got a store in Gillette Stadium, so there's a lot of really great built-in marketing opportunities. I'm sure they're going to leverage that as much as possible, and that's going to be really great for that area. As they branch out and kind of expand more, I'm sure Brady has a lot of connections to other athletes and that he can help, get involved in things of that nature. It makes a lot of sense for that brand, and I think it can be positive overall. I just don't know that it moves me a lot. My biggest concern, the thing that scares me the most, is that you get some crazy idea and that one day I have to report to Tim Tebow as my boss, in which case I quit immediately.
Now that you said it, Doug, that sounds pretty good. Cards HQ by Tim Tebow.
Yep. I'm out.
Yep. We might be onto something there. I don't know. What do you think, T-Pod?
Well, we saw Jeter buy a stake in Arena Club.
Yeah.
And I would say that hasn't hurt. How much has it helped them? I don't really know. I mean, they've built their business. And I think that at the end of the day it's what you have to do. You have to build a solid business. CardVault's done that. They're not like one of these athletes started steakhouses where the steak's just not good and so it's not going to work out, right? So that happens. That's happened with a number of different athletes, and athletes sometimes dip their toes into different stuff and it does or doesn't succeed. The business has to be good, especially in a competitive market like, setting up card shops and doing that. It's got to be good. So I think it'll help draw some eyes to them, and certainly it's an injection of capital, which is probably what they were after more than anything. But getting a face like Tom Brady, I mean, you can't really go much higher than that in terms of appeal in the sports card industry. So I think it'll be good for them. They've built a good business model, and hopefully it pays off.
I took a group of 12 people to Emmett Smith's Steakhouse.
I knew this
I wasn't going to name him.
As soon as you
Las
said
Vegas.
that,
I wasn't going to name him.
yeah.
Last year, the worst meal and restaurant experience of my life.
That is so crazy.
Which pains me
That's your guy.
as a Florida Gator.
Yeah.
Emmett is my guy. The restaurant and experience was awful. Awful. So yes, the athlete attaching his name to a restaurant, good point. You've got to have the operations. Of course, CardVault does. They're a well-run shop, and so I'm sure they're going to be successful. I think it's a big deal because I think that Brady is now motivated to bring his large audience and his large following more into cards. And so I think it's a big deal for that reason. I think it's a mass media play. It's a mass exposure play. If Brady can get 1/100th of his Instagram followers to join a break when they've never joined a break before, or walk into a CardVault store or order a box of, Top Series 1 to be shipped to their house. If you can do any of those things, then that's going to be successful for the hobby overall. It's going to bring more eyeballs to the hobby overall and just continue to grow the overall hobby. So I think it's a big deal.
I had an experience with Gary Brackett. Remember Gary Brackett, the middle linebacker for the Colts?
I certainly don't.
He
I
was
actually
solid.
don't remember Gary Brackett.
Maybe I'm more into inside linebackers than you guys. I don't know. Probably am. But he played on their Super Bowl teams. He was very good. And he started a restaurant chain in Greater Indianapolis called Stacked Pickle in my last company. And
That was my middle school nickname.
I had some issues with them. Sales was all like, it's Gary Brackett. It's Gary Brackett. This is going to be a great success. And then in 2021, they filed bankruptcy. So yeah.
Doesn't always work.
Doesn't always work. You got to have a good steak, a good stacked pickle, whatever that is, and a good card shop.
All right. Well, there you go. Point noted. All right. Good show today, guys. Don't forget about the Arena Club drop tomorrow. Promo code SCI20 for 20% off your first purchase at Arena Club. And of course, bcwsupplies.com, promo code SCI for 10% off everything there. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you soon with our next one. Take care.